And we are live, I think. Yeah, there's that little red light. We are live. This is 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Artiaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here, looking Christ-like, I would say.
Well, I certainly feel nailed to a cross.
Don't we all, man? Don't we all? Don't we all? When you lose to a kickoff return and a series of or a bevy. Was that a bevy or was that a buffet, Simon, of pre-snap penalties?
It was a
banquet.
Banquet. What's the group of flamingos called? That's got a beautiful name.
A flock. A flock.
No, they're not a flock.
A flamboyance.
That was a flamboyance.
Pre-snap penalties. Yeah,
that was absolutely a flamboyance.
Anyway, it's time to remind everybody that we are brought to you by the most appropriate of all sponsors, 305-800 Pain. Just like the Dolphins. Yep.
Other side, Chris.
Yeah, they give us a lot of pain. You need to be ready too. After an accident, call your first. Your first move should be to call 305-800 Pain. Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating. Your car accident, personal injury specialists. Past connections with trusted doctors and attorneys, always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, that's 305-800-PAIN, 305-800-PAIN. Please don't call them and say that there was too many pre-snap penalties on Sunday. I don't think that they handle that. We handle that, however. Simon, I was talking to your co-host, Chris Kaufman, here before you joined us in the backstage area, and I was telling him that good news is on the way because Mike McDaniel.
No, don't be ridiculous, Simon.
Maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Maybe,
good news.
Yeah, Darren Waller might not play this Thursday. So
wow.
Yeah, he might not play, which is shocking news.
That's shocking.
You know.
Who knew?
But Mike McDaniel announced to the world, or at least the football world and the local media, that they figured out their procedural issues. They got together with the coaches and they fixed it, and he will have a fix in effect for Thursday night. Are you excited, Simon?
Oh, shit. Am I excited about what? The fact that he claims that they fixed procedural issues. I mean, that's just not a thing. It's been 4 years and it's happened every single game.
I'm glad that week 2 of the fourth year they decided to fix it instead of after the playoff game in 2022. Remember how the playoff game ended in 22 with Skylar Thompson and the shameful way we actually had a chance to win that game in Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
And the shameful way that ended, it was very strikingly similar.
Didn't we have a 9-point lead with 9 minutes left of the fourth quarter?
Yeah, and then like the final drive at the end, we just had all the procedural, all those penalties, and play couldn't get off, play couldn't, and I guess you could blame that on Skylar Thompson, but it was the same thing. And if they didn't fix it then during a playoff game, after a playoff game ended that way, and they're waiting until 2025. Week 2.
But I think the problem in Buffalo was that Mike had all that vape smoke in his mouth, but he couldn't get the calls off that quickly. I think that was the.
Yeah,
I mean, I started yesterday. I went back and watched the last 2 drives, and I think of the last 5 plays, I think that the 5th last play was the one that got called as a timeout because of the injury, but they broke the huddle with 7 seconds left. Broke the huddle with 7 seconds left. They got away with one. Then there was a false start penalty. Then they got the ball off with 2 seconds to spare. And the false start penalty, Tua motioned Malik Washington from Z into the formation with 2 seconds left. That was going to work.
That's great.
There was a false start penalty. Then the snap, the third last play, there was that was with 2 seconds left. The penultimate play where Tua inexplicably ran out of bounds, even though he had Tanner Connor wide open right in front of him. That also was with 2 seconds to go. And then the final play actually happened with zeros on the clock and the play clock when the ball got snapped. So
right, I do recall.
Yeah. I mean, kind of stunning, really.
It's incredible. And you could go back to a bunch of games. I go back to that game because people remember it differently. People remember it as just a cleanly, fought game on both sides. I'm talking about the snow game in 22 in Buffalo, where they lose on a walk-off field goal after a pass interference call on Kader Kohu. By the way, that was pass interference. People forget the final Dolphin drive, okay, which was to open up an 8-point lead before Josh Allen drove the length of the field, got the touchdown, and then got the 2-point conversion. People forget Dolphins are up 5, and it's 3rd and 1. They took a procedural penalty to make it 3rd and 6 in a game where they ran for 186 yards.
That's what I was referring to.
And now it's 3rd and 6. And now it's 3rd and 6. And what is the next play? Tua throws it to Durham Smythe. He gets stopped for a 3-yard gain. They kick the field goal. They go up 8. They extend that drive. They get a touchdown. They probably win. So it's all the hidden penalties, the little mistakes, a game here, a game there.
It's 4 years of this. It's 4 years. It's 4 years of this.
Mm.
I mean, this is year 4, and we have been complaining about it since year 1, right? And not just us. I mean, we're not special. Everybody's been complaining about it since year 1, and 4 years, 4 years in, and now you fixed it. Now you supposedly have fixed it. And
yeah. I'll ask Chris another question because I've just got to go and kill a spider in the other room because my business is freaking out. Just talk amongst yourselves. I shall return.
Okay.
That used to be my job.
Yeah, get a bat or something. By the way, if you want to become a member of our Discord and you want to interact with us more, you could go right there, right under my name. It says discord.gg/OnlyFans. That's where you can join us. You become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. If you want to buy our gear, like this beautiful hat that I have here, you see this?
It's a wonderful hat.
You see that hat? Mm-hmm. You could get that on our site. And the great thing about this hat is that it doubles as a hat, so you don't have to wear the shame of the Miami Dolphins on your head.
Killer returns.
Yeah,
Took care of that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what you got to do now, Simon?
Eat it.
You gotta get that spider. You gotta get the cadaver, the corpse of that spider, and just leave it in the middle of the living room with a sign right next to it that says, "This is what happens to you."
Yeah.
And all his friends will not come around.
I think that's a good plan. Do you think we could do that with Chris Greer when he goes into the office?
By the way, Simon, I was up when you went away. I did an ad for our store. You could get this hat, and I was telling people you don't have to wear the shame of the Miami Dolphins on your head. Like you could say that this is a Hurricanes hat.
Yeah.
I want to break the monotony of this because we're going to be able to talk about this in the second half of the show for 15 minutes.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to ask you, Simon, and I know that Chris saw the Hurricanes on Saturday. Carson Beck, huh? Is that going to be a thing in a couple of weeks here?
Oh, I mean, it should be a thing. I mean, bigger challenges lie ahead. Florida, it's Florida State. And I think that'll be the interesting thing. I mean, I think the thing about Beckett is that, we talk about, he 18 months ago, this was the guy that people were talking about as being the first overall pick in the draft. And he's clearly got some confidence back, getting out of Georgia and those sorts of things. And the issue to me is whether or not he can be consistent when things get a little bit complicated. I think he's kind of the same guy we saw 2 years ago in Georgia. And the deep balls are great, and he's got that moxie, and everything is great when he has time in the pocket. But the pressure is a bit, the decision making under pressure is the thing that concerns me a little bit. And we'll see that, and all of these quarterbacks that we're talking about with 2026 in mind, there are significant question marks as we move ahead, and it's an important time for if you're Dolphin fans. It's an important time if you're us to kind of be watching these guys. And we were doing some stuff on the Discord today trying to work out who we thought would come out and who we thought probably wouldn't come out because of their age and those sorts of things. And next, obviously, a redshirt senior, and he'll come out. And I think if he continues that kind of the upward move that he's making around that with those great group of receivers, then he's going to be fully in the mix. But there's bigger challenges ahead for him than there were on Saturday, and we'll see how he goes.
Yeah, Mario Cristobal had a great quote. Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I'll get you in here in a second. He had a great quote, and he said it earlier in the season. They asked him, what's going to be the identity of your team? And he said, last year, our star was Cam Ward. This year, our star is our offensive line.
And that is exactly right.
Plus those you got those edge weapons in Bain and Messidor as well. That's the
the defense was nuts in that in that game against South Florida. Not that South Florida's offense is any good. People got way ahead of themselves with Byron Brown. I thought, I've watched him obviously for years, but I think that Carson Beck is going to really impress the coaching staffs of various teams in the league. It's going to be one of those classic battles. It's going to be the potential versus versus mastery of an offense, and he had full mastery of that offense. He could orchestrate everything as they're trying to attack South Florida, and he had the offensive line to make sure that they could do that. And so I think that it's going to be that classic thing where he's also got kind of a potential hero's schedule. So if he knocks it out of the park this year, then he's Matt Ryan, and if he doesn't, then we're talking about kind of him in similar terms to how we were talking before this year. So I think that it really is going to depend on how he finishes that schedule. But yeah, I mean, if he does really well with this schedule, then they will be talking about him like another Matt Ryan almost. And so that, because that's how he looked.
Yeah.
Fun
we kind
stat.
of get the reason why we're talking about him, though, don't we? I mean,
Fun stat for Carson Beck. If he gets drafted in the first round in the NFL, and let's say he gets drafted by Miami in the first round, or even Miami in the second round, he will not be able to afford the house that he is currently living in Miami.
And that's so important when we're getting that question. We got to get to the Dolphins, but when we get to that question about like which quarterbacks are coming out, this is not the same environment anymore. Premium players in college football are getting a lot of money, and they have every reason to stay where they know they can get that money. And as opposed to testing out uncertain waters in the NFL, and quarterbacks are just de facto premium players, right? So they're collecting money. So the quarterback position in particular is going to be subject to this. And I think NFL guys are actually going to like it because they've been complaining for a while that these quarterbacks are not coming out with experience. But that's not going to be an issue anymore. And they're staying in college. They're going to get experience, right? So so I think that you're looking at all these guys, and we talked about with John Mateer, Fernando Mendoza, like, are they really going to be one and done at their new transfer school? Like, there's going to be a lot of pressure for them to stay a second year. And it happened with Taylor Green at Arkansas.
Or to go somewhere else. If you're Mendoza at Indiana and there's
sure,
Miami's going to be looking for a quarterback next year. Penn State's going to, do you know what I mean? It's and Indiana to Penn State is not that. And I think, you just mentioned it. Mendoza, Mateer, these are guys that, Lenoris Sellers, he's 20, just 20, a redshirt sophomore. He's almost certainly
not going to come out now.
Yeah, almost certainly not going to come out. People will talk about it, but he absolutely, Dante Moore. I don't think there's a more impressive looking young quarterback than Dante Moore. He's a true junior. Why would he come out? All that Nike money at Oregon, playing in that system with those players. Sam Levitt at Arizona State, exactly the same. The Eli Holstein at Pittsburgh, the money is just there for them to stay. Aiden Charles at Michigan State, just to stay and play. Ty Simpson at Alabama. It's that's the modern landscape of college football these days, isn't it?
They will come out when they're not allowed anymore to collect that money.
Agreed.
All right, very quickly before we go to break, Simon, give me your hierarchy right now for college quarterbacks that you think are coming out. Just give me a top 2 or 3.
Oh, well, I mean, the obvious one. I mean, the obvious ones are the ones who have run out of eligibility. So Taylor Green, obviously at Arkansas, as a redshirt senior, big, long, 6'6", 224, eats up the ground as a runner, big arm. Chris loves him. Chris got onto him 18 months ago, as he always does historically as well with Josh and with Pat Mahomes and these guys. Explosive kind of dual threat guy. He's got to come out. Beck has got to come out. He's a senior. Garrett Nussmeier's got to come out. He's a redshirt senior. Drew Allen's got to come out. He's a senior. So these are the guys that Jalen Daniels has got to come out. He's a 6th-year senior, I think. Cade Klubnik, I think, is a 5th-year senior, so he's going to come out as well. Sawyer Robertson, I think, is a redshirt senior. He might even be a 6th-year senior. So he's coming out as well. So there's a whole bunch of guys that are definitely coming out. But like we said, I think everybody's talking about, this class could be amazing. This class could be amazing. I think you've got Joey Aguilar's another one from Tennessee. He's a 5th-year senior. But, a lot of the names that are being bandied around as the first overall pick, and you talk about the Mendozas and the Mannings. I know Archer's had a great start to the season. The Matias, the Sellers. They're just not going to come out because the cash and the lack of experience. Lenora Sellers, like we said, is 20 years old. Fernando Mendoza is 20 years old. It's like, this is, or 21 years old. It's just not the right time for them to come to the end. If they do, they're getting seriously badly advised, I would say.
Yeah. And I think that the two funnest players to watch among them are the guys I talk about all the time, Taylor Green and Jalen Daniels. But Garrett Nussmeier is going to be up there. And Carson Beck is probably going to be up there. And Drew Allar is going to be up there, so we're going to be looking at, I don't know what to make of Cade Klubnik and, and how things are going. And, so we'll see. But I think that those are the kind of guys that you're looking at. I just know that the fun guys, the fun bunch, the guys to look at while they're playing, John Mateer is real fun to watch, but will he come out? And I think that Taylor Green and, Jalen Daniels, just because he's fun to watch and I like him, doesn't mean I think that he's going to be a really high draft pick or a really high first rounder, because there's a significant injury history to deal with. And in addition to being kind of small. So, 6 foot or 5'11" or whatever he is. And that's significant. Sometimes there's no overcoming that. And so I think Taylor Green is probably the one guy that I would say is coming out that just kind of hits almost everything. And that includes playing for Bobby Petrino in an offense, a second year now, who is the offensive coordinator there. And, kind of, you like to see progress with these guys. They got to get better every year. Right. And he is a guy that is chipping away at his progress at becoming a better and better passer. His issue is just that he has to keep speeding up his process. And he continues to do that every year. So that's probably the one that I'm keeping an eye on the most at this point, even though I can watch Jalen Daniels all day long, but that doesn't mean he's going to be top 5.
The other thing for Miami, look, is, and there's obviously a reason why we're talking about it, because we all feel like the end is nigh and that's the direction we have to move in. But we also, there is also a point about, Tua isn't going anywhere unless he retires, or unless a new GM comes in and just says, I'm going to swallow that monster dead cap and we're just going to, be essentially a JV team for 18 months, which could be an option. It absolutely could be an option. But I think you have to be convicted about a guy. Kyle Krabs made the point in our Discord today, and he's right, 100% right, as always. You've got to have conviction about somebody. You can't go into a process and just think, I was looking at Drew Allen last night. There are some throws that he makes where you're just like, wow, that is, that's legit. And there's other throws you're just like, I just can't countenance that. I can't. The Sellers, I've done 7 Lenora Sellers games. 2 this year, didn't do the weekends ones, 5 last year. You just wouldn't put him in an NFL. He's just not an NFL quarterback at the moment. I
think they have to pass the smile test. If you smile unprovoked.
But I do know. See, you can smile unprovoked at Lenoris's unbelievable athletic gifts, which are truly sensational. The way he avoids tackles, the way he breaks out of sacks, the speed he has to pick up yards down the field is incredible. The passing, this is a pure RPO. I've seen him once under center in 7 games. It's a pure RPO, end man on the line reading. half field reads only, very much first read, lock and load, but he's high all the time. His accuracy is all over the place. You don't see a lot of NFL throws. And so I think you've just got to have conviction on the guy, because look, this is clearly a team that's going to have a massive rebuild. It just is. And if you're not convicted on a guy, there are lots of players in this draft, whether that's, the Lomu kids at Utah, if you want to tackle, the Caden Proctor kid at Alabama, you think I want to right tackle because we need to get Austin Jackson out. There's this kid at Auburn, Xavier Chaplin, the tackle. My God, he's unbelievable. But there are some great tackles. The kid, your kid at Miami, Mayaga, he's the right tackle. The defensive tackles, when you look at Peter Woods, for example, is he just too good to pass up? The ends, we've talked about Ruben Bain, but you've got, the Keldrick Falk kid at Auburn, who's unbelievable. You've got TJ Parker at Clemson. You've got Denai Sutton at Penn State. The linebacker group is sensational. And then you look at the corners, McCoy at Tennessee, Mansour Delaney, who's been unbelievable in 3 games for LSU. And then Caleb Downs is probably the best, maybe the pound for pound, the best overall player in the whole thing. And you just think, well, maybe, and I've advocated against this, putting off the decision about a quarterback. But if we are in such a massive rebuild, then just pick good players. You're going to be in the top 3, top 5, unless something drastic happens. So just, load up on really good players and continue to build the roster, and then bring in the right quarterback, rather than just wasting a first round pick on somebody you're not convicted on.
All right, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we will talk about this game, the rest of this game. But first, let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy. Football is back, and Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. You can play with as little as $1. Now, I looked at this tonight, and it's funny that Simon says, have some conviction. I don't have too much conviction, but I think Ashton Jeanty's going to score. So give me an Ashton Jeanty score. All right. And how about Ladd McConkey under 77.5 yards? I think that the Chargers want to be balanced. They want to run the football. They want to play a little bit more on schedule. They're not a really desperate team. If you watch them play, they're a team that knows how to breathe in games. So those are my 2 picks for tonight. Download the app today and sign up with the promo code 3yards to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code 3yards, the number 3 yards. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog, make picks, win money.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/.
All right, that's it. It was, for whatever reason, in a loop, and good thing I can always edit that out and make us sound more brilliant than we actually are, or more brilliant than I actually am, because I'm the idiot who hit loop on that. All right, let's talk about this game. Let's start with the start. Zombified is how I put it today on our Discord. They come out, and it's right down the field, and you could just see it's. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this is worse than the Colts game. Like, this is actually worse than the Colts game. The offense can't get out of its own way. The All-22 looks like it's complete miscommunication there on that pick that got called back. But there they are in another zombified start, and you can lay the entire game at the feet of that start, because if they don't start off like that, they're probably ahead in the game, and they hold on and they win the game at the end. But Jesus, this team just wasn't ready to play. And if that's not on the coaches, I don't know what is. Now, these guys are professionals. So It should stand to
Well-
reason they could get themselves up to play a game, especially their home opener. But what do you make of that start? Because that was shocking. I just stared at the screen like a mental patient. I was just like, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'm like, are we gonna get boat raced by these clowns at home too? Thank God they turned it around in the second quarter and almost took the lead at halftime, because I was embarrassed just to be watching the game, let alone being associated with it. And the fans, in my opinion, had the right idea. Like, they're ready to revolt in that first quarter. And yeah, okay, that's great. Like, they should have. That was an absolute joke, the start of that game. I guess we could start right there, Simon, as we move on toward the later outrages, which are coming.
I mean, it's hard to talk about the start without talking about the whole package in many regards. I mean, just the whole thing. To me, the whole thing was worse in many regards than the first week, and I thought the first week was shameful, and I just didn't think it boded well. Anyway, I don't think it was very good when they just marched straight down the field, play action, moving May out, a little bit of the run game, just smashing us in the mouth. I think that was pretty ominous for the, early on, and just seeing some of the same mistakes, guys filling wrong holes, guys cheating down, like on the touchdown. Jack Jones just crashes down to the line instead of maintaining his integrity on the outside when May rolls out, and he could have thrown to two people, he could have run it himself, and he just thought, I mean, if this is a team that's now fixed its issues with the players only meeting and it's come to play, that first drive and the first offensive drive, just go 3 and out, get booed off the field, was just and it just looked so poor. And there was a peak, and Chris and I were chatting on Discord, and I said at some point that we were going to win this game, and it felt like we'd got the rest of the momentum back, and then we never built on it, Chris, did we? And down the stretch was just the ugliest, most just embarrassing. And then what was almost as bad was the post-game stuff at the podium, when you've got kind of almost like the players accusing the coaches sort of thinly veiling attacks at the players. And if you're winning and there's some shit going on off the field that isn't very good, you're still winning, and that's okay, right? But there's clearly some pretty significant issues because we had a players only meeting in week 1. Mm-hmm. Then there's all the procedural stuff, the communication stuff that we talked about earlier on in terms of the false start penalties, the timeout. I mean, we called a timeout with 14:01 to go in the third quarter. I mean, what's that all about? It's not like we're not going to need that in a close game.
And it's key. It's key. Something that you said, Simon, at the start of your soliloquy, which was there was a point in that game where the Patriots were like, "Oh, okay, you got us. Go ahead and just beat us by 10 points, and we'll plainly get on our plane and go back to New England, go back to Boston."
When Malik scored, it looked like we were just going to pull away and maybe score a couple more touchdowns. And
it looked like a race. It looked like a race to the bottom at the end.
It did, and I don't know. It just gets harder and harder to try and piece together what's happening, and it's got to be. Like, at what point does Steve Ross just say, there's a plane flying around beforehand saying, fire Greer, fire McDaniel? At what point does he look down and see all the things that are happening? I've just seen Channing Crowder just talk about how, Tua's regression is enormous. He can't come off a first read. What I thought was really interesting yesterday, watching the end of the Giants-Cowboys game, was trying to get to Brandon Aubrey's field goal range, i.e. trying to get to their own 35-yard line. But Dak sets up the game winner by that scramble. And there were 2 or 3 times yesterday down the stretch in the fourth quarter where Tua had the chance to pick up yardage with his legs and just couldn't do it. And I get it. I do get it. It must play in his, and we don't know half the stuff that's happened off the field in terms of the relationships with his families and with his family and agents and Nick Hicks and all these different people, trainers, medical people. It must have been extremely difficult, and it must be difficult. But he becomes even more boxed into what he to what he is. And I just thought the whole thing was just is just so bad, missing open receivers. Like the interception to Martin Mapu, like where's he throwing that? It's like, yeah. I mean,
and God bless Julian Hill. He had his hands up like, hey, I'm open. If you give it to me, I'll run a guy over.
like even on the third down play when he runs out of bounds on the penultimate play of the game, he's got Tanner Connor wide open in the middle of the field, like 5 yards in front of him. He can't not see him, and he's a lefty. And it's literally just we're not talking about Cam Ward throwing back 45 yards against the grain to hit Eli Kaimanyor. It's literally Connor's there in front of him, and he just has to. I don't get it.
I don't think he's that guy. I don't think he's going to be that guy. And I think, you know, most of the league are really not that guy. You know, when you're looking at guys, once they tuck the ball and, you know, the defender starts reading that, and they immediately, and especially when it's Tua, if he tucks the ball, defenders are going to disengage. Defenders are going to disengage. They're not going to stay plastered on their receivers. They give the slightest indication that Tua is going to tuck the ball and just go out of bounds or something like that. Then, you know, then I think that they're not worried about him making a ridiculous play. Like, you know, he's not going to stop on a dime, you know, reset his feet and throw something really against the grain that, you know, that most of the coaches, to be fair, would be like, you know, don't do that. Don't throw late over the middle like that, especially when you've got pursuit angles. You know, it's almost like playing Frogger with the ball at that point. So I think that's not going to happen. Defenders are open season on him right now. There's a lot of damned if you do, damned if you don't in his game right now, because he's been explicitly told by the coach and the general manager, you must not take those risks. You must not take those risks. You're being selfish if you take those risks. You're letting your team down if you take those risks. And I think that's gotten into his head. How could it not? And I think that also there's the potential that he is in some way diminished as a player. And whether that's a combination of mental because of worrying about the concussions, or maybe he didn't have the preparation this offseason that he wanted because of the way last year ended and the fact that he needed to get away just on a human level. And I think he even said that, like, he needed to go enjoy himself. He's partying on a boat and stuff like that, you know, and I don't know that people got to live their lives, but this offseason didn't strike me as the type of offseason that Tua had generally had in his previous off seasons. And part of that was because of the way last year ended. He did need to get away. He did need to go enjoy his life, enjoy his kids, enjoy his family, things like that. And so, you know, whatever the reason is, I don't see the solution either. And that's the real problem, because he's not going to get less of a concussion risk. He's not going to physically, you know, he's not going to get hardware out of his ankles and his hip all of a sudden. It's a real tough one. That's why we're talking about these quarterbacks ultimately. Now, as for the game itself, I still focus on the defense a lot, because I think the defense, while the offense clearly got it going in the game, right? Like, they started out kind of shamefully, but they got it going. They scored. Simon, you and I are talking. They're going to win this game now, because it seemed like the offense had got going again, right? Like, here we go. They're gonna do it, but the defense doesn't allow them to win right now. And I think that, you know, mapping this out, it's really striking to me how much worse it could have been defensively, even though it was bad. They've had 14 real drives and so far this year, and they've allowed scores on 12 of them. Two of them, the two punts that happened, one of them happened because of a bad snap, right? They lost, the Patriots lost 13 yards on a bad snap and resulted in, like, what, a 3rd and 26 or something like that. That's an unwinnable down. And so, you know, that's one of the stops that they managed to get, one of the two on the season that they managed to get. But it could have been worse, because the Patriots were trying out a lot of heavier personnel against the Dolphins. They went with heavier personnel, whether it's 12 or 21 or 22 personnel. And they tried out especially a lot of 21 personnel with two halfbacks, with both Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson. They tried it out, like, you know, more than half the time. the time, and which is an unusual thing in this league. And unusual when you think about the Dolphins' weakness, which is the secondary. Like the secondary, if anything, you want the Dolphins to have to pull more secondary players on the field and challenge them. And sure enough, when the Patriots actually did go 11 personnel, they had an 85% success rate on pass plays out of 11 personnel, which is just awful. And it's just like, and it's just a reminder that even though the defense, like, there were times when they stiffened up a little bit, like, I give them some credit for that field goal that they kept the Patriots to at the end, even though, the Patriots got the ball in scoring position, right? They did get a stop there. It gave the Dolphins offense a chance to have a final drive, to have a game-winning touchdown final drive. Giving them some credit on that, but it could have been a lot worse, what the defense gave up in that game. And the Patriots shot themselves in the foot a lot with their own penalties and trying out the heavier personnel against really the strength of the Dolphins team is that front seven, or defense is that front seven. The weakness is that secondary. You want to pull them into nickel, in a dime, and get those extra DBs on the field, and then take advantage of the holes in the coverage. Patriots didn't really do that, and I worry that this defensive situation is not getting better yet, and we're probably going to see that, especially against the Bills, because who better to take advantage of your leaky defense than Josh Allen and the Bills offense. So that's what I walk away with. This reminds me so much of 2019 as far as defensively goes. Nobody questions that Brian Flores has had defensive chops, right? But we had to be questioning it then, when you're allowing 40 points here, 50 points there. The defense couldn't stop anybody, but it was like installing a new defense with bad personnel. And we know it was bad personnel because of the tank season and all of that. There was that. I remember that Pittsburgh game. We did a blitz zero look, and we called it the tank play. We called it the tank play. Like they're literally tanking on this play. But you're looking at that, and in hindsight, it was like, are we really questioning whether the defensive coaches knew what they were doing? What Brian Flores knew what he was doing? Yeah, he knew what he was doing. It's just that he didn't have the personnel in place. And I think that we do not have even close to the personnel in place to run Anthony Weaver's defense. We don't. The personnel that are most likely to do all right in that are guys like Rasul Douglas, who got here less than a month ago, something like that. You're not putting the defense and the team in position to succeed when you run the personnel the way that the Dolphins have run personnel this offseason. I think that we're starting to figure out that some of the guys we spent a lot of time complaining about last year were probably helping the defense hold on by a thin thread last year, because they had at least a lot of experience. And now you're running with guys that don't have experience and don't have talent. Some of the guys had experience and talent, like Jalen Ramsey, and we bitched about them a lot, but it's better than what we're seeing right now. I mean, having an 85% success rate passing in 11 personnel is, insane, and it bodes terribly going forward. So I think that defensively, more pain is coming.
More pain is coming. More 305-800 pain is coming.
More 305-800 pain.
All right, moving on to the second half. The offense got it going. Now, Simon, do you know how many carries Ollie Gordon had?
Yeah, had one.
Yeah. Do you know what he did in that one?
Yeah, he picked up 8 yards.
And he broke 4 tackles.
Yeah, what I think is amazing. I want to talk about this actually. What I think is amazing about Ollie Gordon is that he had the one carry, right? But yet on the final drive, when they clearly weren't going to run the ball, he's on the field all the time, and he was the one that false started at one point.
Yes, and it's twice. Like, I think he had 2 errors.
Yeah, why is he on the field at this point? Like, you're not going to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't that drive. Also, there was a second down on that drive, which you had Jalen Waddle just sat on the sideline. It's just like, why is Waddle not in the game? Why is Ollie Gordon in the game? And I don't necessarily blame him for all those kind of false starts and the because they're still running motions at the point where you like, hurry up, lads, we've got to get going, and you're still running motions. Just get, if Tyreek's literally running in 5 yards and stopping and going from that point, just get him to start from the start point. Don't worry about the wasting the 5 seconds of the motion. What I find so fascinating about Ollie Gordon is that Malik Washington had 3 carries, Ollie Gordon had 1. Now, Malik's first carry came on a jet sweep, but the other 2 carries came out of single back formation when he was literally lined up as a running back. These weren't trickeration, little kind of pop passes, these were actual turn and hand the ball off to a running back. So you're telling me that you're giving the ball. I love Malik Washington, really great player, and get the ball in his hands as much as possible. But you're giving the ball to the guy who is a slot wide receiver, and you're not giving it to the guy who won the Doak Walker Award 2 years ago, who every time you get him the ball, he just smashes people in the mouth and always falls forward and picks up chunks of yardage. That to me makes no sense. And it just, that speaks to me of the kind of the minutiae problems with the offense, the small pieces of the offense. And Tua talked about after the game, and Daniel talked about after the game about kind of different personnel people being in and different personnel not knowing what they were doing and this, that, and the other. That speaks to the whole minutiae of the machine that seems to have gone so badly wrong that everything, you look at kind of the teams that just move the ball and are in complete control. Tua, I don't know whose fault it is, and I'd love to be able to, if we ever get the chance to go in and talk to Teron Armstead, I'd love to say to him, you were in those huddles. What's that like? Is the play so long? Is the verbiage so much that, when the call comes into Tua's ear, is it so many words to get out? Is he having to explain to people is he telling people what their jobs are? Like, why are you getting to the line with like 9 seconds to go and then you've still got to motion people and you're just getting the snap off? I'd love to know what that process is in terms of, is McDaniel changing the play before the 15-second cutoff? How is it working? What's going wrong? Because that to me just felt like such an indictment of all the bad stuff that was happening elsewhere. And then defensively again, we can't stop anyone. I mean, you look at what the Bills did yesterday. I mean, they ran for 221 yards. I mean,
by the way, Tua alluded a little bit to what you were saying earlier about, what's happening in that huddle. Tua said, sometimes I get the call and it's a wristband call, and sometimes we're changing the call before the 15-second.
But why is that? Why are we still in this situation?
What I took from that comment was, give me wristband calls and this offense will run.
But don't give him a call that's like, dagger right, hot 64 jet, W14, turbo 7 on 3, and then get to like 17, 16, and then go, actually check, let's go. Alf 94 motion, team boss 127.
Time out.
Why are you doing that? Yeah.
Time out.
Then you're in timeout.
By the way, I'm a huge fan of Charles Davis. I see him every year at camp. I have good conversations with him. I think
great guy. What a great guy he is.
I think he's one of the best analysts there is out there, and
one of the best people.
Yes, and he should be on one of the top teams, in my opinion. He said something in the game that you ever have like one of those light bulb moments when you're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. But it's so good and so smart in its simplicity. Charles Davis said the quickest way back for Miami is to identify that Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane are good players and just put the ball in their hands consistently.
But put the ball in their hands in the right situations. Like, again, how many times we say it? Just like constantly running Achane with when you're not running split zone, when you don't have a lead fullback and just running in between the A gap. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Like we almost won the game by getting the ball to him out in space on the, he scored a touchdown by getting him out in the slot and getting him a favorable matchup against a guy that just can't cover him in Robert Spillane. And he goes down and scores a touchdown. If he didn't step out of bounds, he probably wins the game getting the ball flared out to him as we should be giving him the ball, not handing it him and just expecting him to, against an offensive line. We can talk about the right side all we like in terms of Borum and Smith, who held up okay, actually, for most of the game.
Yeah, most of the game.
Yeah, about as well as
the game.
About as well as you can expect,
Until it mattered most, then they collapsed on the right side. But I'm sorry, the left side was not, Paul is significantly further on than I expected him to be. There were some rough plays on that tape yesterday, but Savonai was dreadful. Like he was getting abused by Milton Williams. And look, Milton Williams is a good player. There's a reason he got paid $26 million a year. But like he was getting dog walked back into passing lanes. He was just getting beaten like for quickness, inside, outside. It was not good at all. But yeah, I mean, I just don't know where you go. And like, I think we all know what's going to happen. You know, if you're Steve Ross and you're sat there and you're listening to that Mike McDaniel press conference, and it's like, well, wait a minute, I've just watched you lose a game you should have won in the home opener. We've not had a turnover all season in terms of actually getting a turnover. Our quarterback's, you know, thrown an absolute dolly of an interception, and yet again he's played small in a big moment, and we lost the game. The offensive line was a bit, you know. Defensively, we're all over the shop. The vaunted pass rush can't really get anywhere near, you know, a quarterback. And we've just not played very well. Oh, and we've had penalties, we've had sacks, we've had interceptions, we've had procedural stuff, we've had communication stuff, we've taken timeouts early. But if you're Steve Ross, you're 85 years old. Like a proper rebuild, which is what this team needs. And it needs gutting. And I don't want to be getting people out of jobs, those scouting staff and all of those people. I don't want to do that at all. But the general manager, I think we all probably think the head coach, it's probably just time. The quarterback, it's probably just time. For Steve Ross, you're 85 years old, and a proper rebuild, when realistically you're going to be competitive? 2028? I mean, he's what, 88 years old then? 89 nearly? I mean, is that really what he wants to do after all the money that he's put into this team? I mean, I don't want to, much as I don't want to put people out of jobs, I also don't want to kill a person, but he might not be alive at that point. You know, where's the joy coming from for Stephen Ross?
I think what Stephen Ross can expect is what other teams have done. Denver has gone from getting 70 hung on their head to basically inside of a year in the playoffs, and now look like they're going to be a perennial playoff team.
But what's out there in terms of, if you sack McDaniel, Chris, what, you know, we've talked about this. We talked about this on Discord.
So it can change quickly. They can turn it around quickly.
Well, I think defensively, defensively, if it clicks, to me, I think the defense has, even though it's been the most atrocious side of the ball so far, it has the most potential to click and get back on track, probably because there's just, you know, no room to go but up. But I think that you know, Denver, you speak about that 70-point drop on them. They were about, I mean, if you do it statistically, they were like a top 3 defense after that game for the rest of that season. The Denver defense was, you know, measured in a bunch of different ways. I think that offensively, the offense is predicated on they'll never see this coming. And that's I guess there's a good and a bad to that. But we're seeing a lot of bad to that. Like it's a lot of bass awkwardness when you have Ollie Gordon out there being a rookie and doing rookie things like getting false starts and not quite, you know, knowing what he's about out there on plays where he's out there even though he's not going to get the ball, and he's not the ball carrier. And instead you have Malik Washington as the ball carrier out of a halfback position. And, you know, because clearly the issue with the offense was that our running back, Devon Achane, is clearly too big. We need to get smaller and more maneuverable. You know, that's really backward. And I think that's because McDaniel is all about what they won't see coming, and, you know, fooling the opposing defense and misdirection and things like that. This is what he's trying to do. He's trying to get personnel packages on the field and alignments out there that leave the defense like, well, you know, what are we going to do here? Guessing and kind of hesitating and things like that. But at the end of the day, one of the most successful drives that the Dolphins had at the end of the half offensively, they line up and hurry up, and they're doing wristband calls, and they're splitting guys out wide, and they're running simple plays to good players and you know, they throw a ball to Devon Achane and he takes it to the house. You know, I think that and not letting the defense get set and get ready and get their ducks in a row to handle all of these good players that Miami has. And I think they need to really take a look at that and take that to heart, because there clearly is a situation happening here where the complexity of the offense is detracting from its performance, and it's no longer, the complexity of the offense is no longer shaking loose these star players that you know, can go ahead and be stars. I think it's kind of gone the other way, because defenses have started to take their time and figure out how to play Miami and take away that first read. And you could see it happening. You could see the Patriots defense know what that first read is going to be and pull out a guy to literally just go out there and reroute the receiver that you know is going to be the first guy. And there's a specific play that I'm thinking of where that happened. And so that's something that they've really got to look at offensively. But defensively, you know, I don't think, I want to say things can't get worse, but they probably are going to be worse before better, because they're facing Josh Allen in Buffalo this Thursday on a short week.
Yeah, that's
so
murder.
You know, they're going to have a moment where they're in the absolute pits. But I do think that things could turn up a little bit better, unless, you know, just from a personnel standpoint, it's just unable to happen. But people ask me all the time, you know, like, you know, how can the defense be this bad when you have such good front seven talent? And I'm like, well, if this were a 7-on-7 game, then that would be fine. But this is not a 7-on-7 game. And the reality is you can't pass rush anybody if you don't cover anybody. I mean, if you don't win on those early downs by being able to cover people, and, you know, when the quarterback is getting the ball out of his hands in 1.9 seconds, which is too short a time period for anybody to get there and rush, then you're not going to have those 3rd and 7 opportunities where we did get the sack and we did actually force them into a punt. You know, like, it's not, the whole defense from a personnel standpoint was built on a lie, and which is that this could work, that it didn't matter what you do in the secondary. You don't have to have a complete defense because your front seven is just that wild and they're just going to all do it themselves. That was a lie. No defense does that. It doesn't exist. And so I think that this is unfortunate for Anthony Weaver, probably most of all, because in addition to having bad personnel in the secondary, he has personnel everywhere that don't even fit. You know, they don't even fit the scheme, and they're being taught to play ways that they haven't before. And so it's really unfortunate for Anthony Weaver. I don't want to give him a pass because he brought up the Willie Gay thing. You know, he says that he has to find snaps for Willie Gay, and he only found three snaps. But you know what he did? He found it. He found it by coming out with a completely new package. He came out with a classic 4-3 package with 3 off-ball linebackers with Jordan Brooks and Tyrell Dodson and Willie Gay all out there at the same time. And you know, there are only some situations where you can do that. And they found a couple of situations where they could actually, technically speaking, he was out there for 4 snaps because one of them was a false start. But I mean, like, still, like, I think that's you know, the part of the struggle. Also, just off to the side, I think that there's an issue with the linebacker coach and his preference for Tyrell Dodson over Willie Gay. And I think Anthony Weaver doesn't want to directly overrule one of his assistants. Like, and this is one of those things. So, you know, keep in mind, Anthony Weaver's only like his 2nd season as a real defensive coordinator. And
by the way, I thought it was instructive. In training camp. The first guy that won a job that was not named Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, or Tua Tagovailoa, or Alec Ingold for that matter, was Tyrell Dodson, who Joe Barry, a few days into camp, while Willie Gay is making plays all over the field, and you're like, who the hell? My God, this is Willie Gay looks like he's going to be a starter on this team. He's going to be a contributor. And Joe Barry comes out and announces, I've never heard of this before. We're talking about 4 days into camp. Oh no, Tyrell Dodson is our starter along
Yep.
with Jordan Brooks.
And
4 days into camp.
That's an awkward situation for a defensive coordinator who hasn't had a lot of seasoning as a defensive coordinator. He is not Vic Fangio that's been around forever, and you would expect him to be, a stubborn old cuss that says, no, this is my guy. This is, I don't care what you think. This is not that Anthony Weaver. So some of the sins that you're seeing with Anthony Weaver really do seem because of a little bit of inexperience and lack of seasoning as a defensive coordinator. But at the same time, he has been absolutely sabotaged from a personnel standpoint. And
Absolutely.
on offense, the problem with Mike McDaniel is you can't say the same thing on offense. I was doing this the other day. All of these players have been here for 3+ years, or, are working on their second year in the offense. Yeah, we have a few new guys, but it's not even worth mentioning. And this offense, this is the type of offense that you want to keep these guys around. The classic, when you have so much turnover, it's really hard to establish yourself. Well, no, they don't have a lot of turnover on offense. They have the guys that they have the guys that have been here for years and have been running it. This should be running like a top. Instead, it's running embarrassingly bad from the standpoint of organization and execution. Like not just embarrassingly bad because the guys that have been around that we trust to operate the offense are just not that talented and they're not winning. No, it's running badly because those guys that have been around are not executing and they're not getting their assignments, and there's still operations issues from the coaching standpoint with the personnel groupings and things like that. Like, how does that happen? How can that not be an extremely poor reflection of your head coach, who is the de facto offensive coordinator? How could that not be?
Yeah, and let me say this, because we got to get out of here. We've ran a little long for this, but I thought that this game deserved this going over. That wristband that Tua's wearing, that's the install. On Monday, the coaches get together and they sit around in a conference room. They got film. They got their preliminary, advanced scout from the team that they're going to play. And they kind of know what they're going to be facing. And they sit around and say, what do you like for 3rd and 6? What do you like for 3rd and 10? What do you like for short yardage? And they start narrowing down the playbook. Because look, the playbook has 1,000 plays maybe. So they start narrowing it down. And usually an install could be as little as 40 plays. But the high end is like 80 plays. That wristband has the entire install. They hand that to the quarterback room on Tuesday. There should be no reason for them to be calling stuff that is not on that wristband.
Part of the problem with that, though, you go back and look at what the Saints did with Breeze and with Sean Payton. They did the install together because Payton asked Breeze, what do you like on 3rd and 6? You're the guy that's actually carrying it out. The fact that Tua is, I just think there should be, and I don't understand why there isn't more early week integration of the quarterback if that's how it works. Why is he not involved in choosing the plays that he feels comfortable? Because clearly, he is limited to a greater or lesser degree. So I personally would involve him in that kind of Peyton and Breeze just used to sit there for 5 or 6 hours, just skull session, just going through 3rd and 1. What do you think? First downs, what do we think? 3rd and 10, what these situations? If we're, 2nd and 15, what's your, what are your red zone calls? What's your 1st and goal? All of those things.
And by the way, there's an excerpt in quarterback with Joe Burrow sitting in with Zach Taylor, and Joe Burrow flat out looks at the screen and goes, I don't like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Take that out.
And maybe that does happen, but it makes me nervous when I hear that the coach is just sitting there doing it and the quarterback's not involved in that situation. It's like, he's the guy that's out there doing it. What do you like to throw on 3rd and 5? What works for you on? I mean, I play quarterback for my flag football team. I know what plays I like, but in certain situations, I know the plays that I want to go to. In certain situations, if it's 4th and 5, I know that I'm going to call play 19 because I know exactly how. It must be the same for him, thinking, okay, 3rd and 5, I know what works. So I know that Tyreek's going to do this, or that Westbrook is going to do that, or Tanner Connor's going to go. Like, why is he not involved in those things. That that would concern me if that's actually a thing.
Yeah, but I thought it was really instructive because Chris said something instructive earlier today on our Discord. And again, if you want to become a member, right there, right under my name, discord.gg/OnlyFans. You become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. Chris said that he spoke fluent Tua, and I think I'm kind of a pretty good Tua whisperer myself. When he mentioned the wristband calls, and he says sometimes we get a different call, and it's right before the cutoff. I know what that means, and that means that wristband call came in. It's play 11. All right, huddle. Here's the play. Oh, wait a minute. It's a different play, and now there's 9 seconds on the play clock, and I gotta organize and orchestrate with 9 seconds a new play.
And Alpha, somebody on Twitter pointed this out to me that that part of that answer did not find its way into the official YouTube Q&A. Like the Dolphins official, like there's so like everybody's like, everybody's all, make too big of a deal, you read too much into it, stuff like that. No, that was Tua speak for, you guys really messed this up. Like, and that was not, and I think that was kind of also pushback from Tua. Like, hey, you spent a week last week just blaming the players up and down. That everything that we worked on all summer long, it's just really disappointing. The players weren't executing it, didn't know their assignments and stuff like that. They blamed, you have Mike McDaniel out there calling Tua out for not having a good game, for bad plays. You have Mike McDaniel calling Zach Sealer out, right? As we talked about last week. It's sort of that, Mike McDaniel's kind of fostering, and particularly on offense, a culture of what I call public accountability. And it's very public accountability, where Mike McDaniel will throw in those obligatory, the buck does stop with me and I'm responsible for all of it and stuff like that. But when it comes to the details and the subtleties, he's going to let who really, the play call got in on time. It was the personnel groupings that didn't come on in time. Well, that's not the play call, is him, right? And so I think that this is a situation where there is a little bit of a mismatch, even just offensively and defensively, between that culture of public accountability versus the private accountability. I think the defense is still very private. You listen to Anthony Weaver talk, and frankly, you wouldn't know this is the worst defense in the league. Everybody is doing a phenomenal job. Everybody is fantastic. Everybody, and if they're not fantastic, it's because they have a really bad set of circumstances, but they're pushing through it. And they're like, this isn't all their fault. We're putting them in a bad situation and stuff like. He's doing all the classic cliche stuff. Zach Sealer does the same. I think the leaders on that defense, when they had a fight in the joint practice because Jordan Brooks is going after Tyler Dodson, and that spilled into the public space and became a story like in public, they went and apologized to everybody about like, no, we should have handled that, privately and stuff like that. But meanwhile, in offense, you have Mike McDaniel calling out Tua, you have Mike McDaniel calling out Tyreek, you have Tyreek calling out Devon Achane, you have Tua Tagovailoa calling out coaches, you have Mike McDaniel calling out assistant coaches. You have, Mike McDaniel calling out Zach Sealer. You have Mike McDaniel calling out like all these different plays. On that touchdown that looked like Storm Duck gave up. Whose fault exactly that was. Why? Because Mike McDaniel revealed it right away. Ifeatu Melifonwu should have gotten over there as a safety. It's a culture of public accountability, which can go all right, but also it can go really wrong if some of those guys behind the scenes are like, I don't like being called out in public like that. Like, and so who knows if that was one of the reasons Jalen Ramsey was fuck this noise. Jalen Ramsey is a super private person. He will not say goddamn thing, excuse my language, a goddamn thing in public about what's going on. He is the football cliche king when it comes to, what he says to the press.
Yeah, 3-word answers. 3-word answers.
Exactly. But in private, In private, that's a different story. And here's, Mike McDaniel, he's like, well, I'm just going to call out everybody. And it's like, Jalen, how come you haven't had an interception lately? Or, so stuff like that. Like, it's a totally different thing. And yes, that can go wrong. That can be toxic, if not everybody's on board with it. It's sort of like you're either in on the joke or you're not in on the joke. And if you feel like you're not in on the joke, it has to be, it's like when we tear each other up or something like that. As long as we're all cool with each other, that's cool. But what if one of us is not?
Yeah.
Like, so it's really, I think it's dangerous, and I think that there is a culture problem building probably because of that.
Yeah, you know who had the greatest, and I promise you, if you're watching us, I promise you we will end this podcast soon. But who had a great podium game yesterday, and that tells you all you need to know? Tyreek Hill. He said all the right things, and maybe he said all the right things because he had 100 yards on 6 catches. But anyway,
until he's like, well, I think the real problem is Devon Achane shouldn't be out there in short yardage. And he's like, well, I've told Devon Achane that. That's there's no
and to speak to your point about public accountability, the very next press conference, Mike McDaniels came out and said, well, that was the emphasis of the entire practice, and we told Tyreek specifically that was the emphasis of the entire practice. So maybe he should have been watching practice. So yeah, it's all this public accountability, but there is no internal.
But imagine Jordan Brooks, if you will, being like, well, I think the problem with our third down conversions is we really need to get Melifonwu off the field on 3rd and long. And I've told him this. He's not fit for that. Like, what if he said that?
Yeah, it'll be an absolute joke. All right, let's end this thing. We will be with you either tomorrow or Wednesday. Trust me, we'll be with you before this game on Thursday Night Football. But till then.
Cheers.